Welcome back to Luke Blues Talking. Joining me this week are Lawrence Nelson, Brian Martin and Gary Redhead. We look back at the first half from Ainsley Park, and we might even touch on the second half, but I think we'll fully concentrate on the first. We'll also look ahead to the Scottish Cup tie with Clydebank, and we're also hoping to hear from a member of Chris Aitken's backroom staff. Lawrence, I'll start with yourself. I was lucky enough to be on commentary with you. If we look at the overall game, first of all.
Overall game, an absolute joy to look back on. I've been looking forward to recording this one this week, Cameron. What's not to love about the whole game? I've listed about 20 different things about this game that I'd like to enthuse over, but just to annoy Brian Martin, let's talk about the fact that George Drummond greeted us all with chocolate muffins at Ainsley Park on Saturday, had them all set out ready for the media team, and yes, we didn't keep a single one for Mr. Martin, who was out on the lash on Saturday afternoon, so hell mend them, as they say. In terms of the game, 4 different scorers, 4-0 up at half-time, clean sheet, and actually, Cameron, I think you were the first person to refer to it, but in a funny kind of way, what was really satisfying was how we handled the second half. You could easily come out second half and thought, this is easy, and then let things slide a little bit, but no, utterly professional second half on Saturday. Kept it at 4-0 and ensured that Josh kept his clean sheet. But no, I'm sure we'll go into more detail in the game itself. But absolutely loved it. And of course, you've got to mention the fact that Paddy Martin lashed that ball into George Drummond's filming point.
I think, did he actually get that through the window there? I didn't see the ball land.
He did, look. Magnificent. George comes out with the ball from the home filming point there. So
the poor boy behind the Spartans camera must have been watching it get closer and closer and closer.
It's a bullseye.
If he tried that 100 times, he'd probably never do it again. Absolutely magnificent stuff.
I must admit, the lovely hospitality, as you touched on with the muffins. I'd like terrible house guests. I don't think we'll be invited back. They put on a spread for us, and then we're 4-0 up at half time. Gary, how did you enjoy it, seeing the goals coming in?
I was just about to say that's 2 weeks in a row it's been cakes and muffins, and I've not got any of them. So off to a bad start with that. No, it was a surprise to see so many in such a short space of time. But I think just before we came on there, I wasn't really surprised to see us get the result. I think two defeats in 11 games, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then the two defeats there could have been different as well. So it wasn't so much a shock to see us getting the result. It was just a pleasant surprise to see so many goals.
What about yourself, Brian? Were you the happiest man in all of Motherwell?
Oh, absolutely, Cammy. But, when I seen the team sheets coming through, I fancied this anyway, but when I seen the team sheets and no Cammy Russell, you were commentating duties, but no Cammy Russell, I says, this is Stranraer's day, and, I didn't expect 4, got to be honest with you, but when Darren opened the score, I says, we'll win this, I think, and just another three goals came upon the first half, and absolutely joys to watch in the Pig Iron in Motherwell.
As you say, Brian, obviously they were missing Cammy Russell, missing Ayrton Sonker, Jamie Dishington as well. I'm sure there might be others, but equally, Stranraer without Corey O'Donnell, without Robbie Foster, folk just coming back from injury as well.
Yeah, I know. The bench, I think, am I right in saying Tommy Sharp was left out at the bench because the bench is so strong now? I think that's just getting nine good solid players on the bench now. So everything looking up. And my start keeps on going. Cammy, that's now 17 games, not getting beat at half time. So I'll keep that going until we get beat at half time.
As long as we're winning at full time, Brian, I'm absolutely fine with that.
I know.
If we go through the goals then, Lawrence, Darren obviously broke the deadlock. Lovely turn and finish.
He had absolutely no right, I would say, to get that shot away from that point of view. And I'm not taking anything away from Darren, but it was Callum Booth, I think, that was behind him. Darren had his back to goal. Now, I was shouting before that James Dolan stopped so Lewis Reader had a shot. It was blocked, I think, possibly by Jordan Tapping. Ball went over the corner flag, and I thought James Dolan was just going to let that go out for a corner. And I thought, that's strange, he stopped it. With hindsight, what an absolute wally I was. Lovely cross in. But again, that's the easy bit in some respects. Darren, back to goal, turned, squeezed a shot past Callum Booth. And I know you said Paddy Martin was a bit statuesque, but actually, at close range, I would imagine Paddy Martin was expecting the defence to do something about that one. From Darren's point of view, lovely, lovely finish.
Just to stick with yourself for a minute, Lawrence. Before that first goal, I'm not saying that we were under siege or anything like that, but we certainly our kind of first positive attack, our first kind of real time in the box, and we get a goal.
Yeah, no, I have. You're quite right. I'd actually scribbled down that I think for about the first 20 minutes, Spartans were arguably on top. Josh Lane pulled off a couple of really good saves in that opening spell. There was one, I think, from McNulty that looks like it was creeping in at the top corner of the net, and then there was the one where, well, there was also one where their skipper lashed one over the bar, but there was also one that was a bit of stramash in the goal, and I think it was Drysdale that had the last touch, and Josh was flat on the deck, kind of cleared it, but waving his leg at it almost. So yeah, that first 20 minutes, you quite say it was overwhelmingly in favour of Spartans, but we had a lot of work to do, and then just it was like a flick of a switch when Darren scored that goal. Everything we touched turned to gold after that.
I'll come to you, Brian, because I know you're a big fan of Darren. He scores all sorts of goals. He took one in the coupon, basically, against Forfar earlier in the season, and then he scored a right scrappy goal against Edinburgh City, I think, last season, where he kind of nipped in between the defender and the goalkeeper. And then at the other end of the scale, the goal against Threave, the goal against Spartans at the weekend there, the goal against East Fife. What is it about Darren that you're a big fan of? Because as I say, he seems to be scoring all sorts of goals.
Now, don't laugh at me here, but I must admit, he's starting to remind me of Craig Malcolm. You know, the kind of striker Malcolm was. You know, and I know when I spoke to Peter Weatherson at the table after I think it was the near relegation season, Peter Nagy, and Peter said, I absolutely love Darren. I think he's a great boy. I think he's a great striker. And maybe a shame Peter didn't stay about the club, you know, for another, because we've now got a striker coach. It's all midfielders, you know. So Darren, I think this is his third season, but you know, I just like the way he goes about things. I know he gets a bit of criticism. I know that. But I mean, the boy was injured for the first 2 months of the season, you know. So he's now in 5, and I said online, he probably might have been in double figures if it hadn't been for his his injury was coming back for. So I just like him as a striker, and you know, Peter Weatherson says he's a good lad, and he's good, kind of good up front. I'll take his word for it.
I don't know if there's any truth to this, Gary, but we had heard a few weeks ago in terms of the management kind of demanding more from Darren, I guess. And I think it could be fair to say, I think he's scored in 3 of his last 5 games. He's got 4 goals in that time. He's certainly delivering at the moment.
That's it. As a striker, if you keep scoring goals and big goals, then you're going to find yourself in the team to continue scoring goals. So I think you couldn't say that he's not stepped up, because the evidence is there. I mean, the goal on Saturday's everything about it's excellent. It does well to get it down, then to turn his defender, and then I mean, and Paddy Martin had absolutely no chance at the time that he sees it. It's coming back the way off the net, so it is. So that's it. If you're a striker and you keep scoring goals, and there's nothing much more you can do.
Sticking with you, Gary, obviously the second goal came from the penalty spot. Any arguments that shouldn't have been a penalty, or more than happy with the referee's decision?
Should have been 2 penalties. It should have been one for the handball and then the second for the foul. It's a definite penalty. Big Evan does well to get his boot in first. I know in the commentary you guys thought it was the handball. It probably could have been the handball, because it does look like it strikes the defender's hand, but Evan gets his foot there first, and the defender makes the contact and he goes down. But that was enough contact to make him go down in the way he did. It's another question, but it doesn't matter, does it? We got the penalty, and there was no doubt that Markey was going to put it away as well.
as Gary kind of highlighted there, I think at the time, Lawrence, we thought it was for the handball. It was only watching the highlights back that I thought, I wonder if he's actually given it for the tackle. Either way, the result's the same, I guess.
Yeah, you said that early Sunday morning. I then looked at the highlights, and I'm in no doubt looking at the highlights that the penalty was for the foul on Evan rather than the handball. But as Gary said, it could actually have been either. It highlights, no pun intended, that when you're doing commentary, you say something, then when you watch the highlights back, you think, got that wrong. In this instance, it's all good because the end result was the same anyway. It was clearly a penalty. It's just how it was a penalty we got wrong. Clear penalty. Credit to Marky Russell. He'd won earlier in the season where he hit the woodwork and we had to have the follow-up. I think it was last season he also had one where it came back out and Robbo buried it for him. But no, he's been pretty lethal with his spot kicks in recent weeks. And I think I also said, talking about bits of an error, I think I said last week that Marky had 5. That's him on 5 now. And when it went to 2, the other thing that I noticed was both you and I were a bit hesitant about getting carried away. So anybody watching the highlights now will be having a laugh because you were saying we've got history against Spartans. They might come back, and I was like, well, we need to keep this tight.
You fancy for the next kind of 10-15 minutes in the lead up to half time, Spartans are probably going to throw everything at Stranraer, try and get themselves back into the game.
And likewise for Stranraer, it's important that we dig in for this next 10-15 minutes.
And we know what happened in the next sort of 5 or 10 minutes. But yeah, all good. Well done, Evan Dunne, for winning that, forcing the foul on him.
Yeah, I must admit, watching it back, I come across as Mr. Pessimistic. It makes it sound as if it's 89 minutes played, and I'm like,
That's my job.
89 minutes played, we're 4-0 up, and I'm saying, keep it tight, lads. You never know what can happen. Brian, as touched on there, I know that Mark Russell has missed from the penalty spot in the past, but it's a nice feeling when he's stepping up to take it because you fancy your chances that the ball's going to end up in the back of the net.
Yeah, I think for a few seasons, Carmy, we didn't have a penalty taker who was that good, but now Carmy Russell, not Carmy Russell, Marky Russell.
You're obsessed.
I just took phones off
obsessed.
and took the penalty.
I think Marky Russell, I think he maybe missed a couple earlier on, but ever since he scored with penalties, he's been absolutely spot on. I know Lawrence said about against Dumbarton come back, but it's really good to have a penalty taker on the pass. I mean, I don't know how many penalties we've had this season. I think James Dolan scored a penalty as well.
James has taken one at least. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Corey as well.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, that's right. So we're the new Bonnie and Egg Roseau League Two. I always say they get plenty of penalties, so we should be getting plenty of penalties this season.
Neil Martin penalty every week.
Yeah.
Lawrence, you just looking at the third and fourth goals kind of together, you hear managers saying that when you're down the bottom of the league, things kind of don't go in your favour. In terms of the 2 goals, and I appreciate you've got to be there to put the ball in the net, but the ball kind of broke kindly for us, I guess.
Yeah, you could say that both of them. It felt as if the ball fell kindly for Quiggy for the third one, and it felt as if Evan Dunne was in the right place at the right time for the fourth one. Again, you and I were playing this down. There was almost a sense of disbelief. Like, it's 3.
Swings it to the front of the box.
Falls to Quigg,
and it's a goal! Aaron Quigg makes it 3 for Stranraer. 39th minute of the afternoon. Another goal out of nothing, Cameron.
Spartans must be wondering what's going on here.
My God, it's 3 and then it's not even half time yet. It's 4.
Sends it across. And it's in! Evan Dunne makes it 4 for Stranraer. 49th minute. All that added on time has come to our benefit, Cameron.
Well, I don't think there have been many folk that have been going into a bookies today and when it said Stranraer 4-0 up at half time against the league leaders away from home. But fair play.
You mean you've not seen my coupon?
No.
My goodness.
We've been arguing probably for the last 2-3 seasons. We're not getting any luck. Somebody watching that from a Spartans red and white tinted spectacles viewpoint on Saturday might have said, my God, how lucky are they? How come they're 4-0 up? We had the best in the first 20 minutes. But aye, absolutely. But both players took their finishes well. Twiggy just slotted it home. Evan Dunne took that one really well as well. So aye, 4-0. It might have taken 49 minutes for the first half, but 4-0.
It took 49 minutes for the first half, and it was about 45 minutes and 1 second for the second half. Time the referee was like, "That'll do it. Time to go."
If that. The thing that I remember looking back on it was that just want to mention this. So obviously we've got the whole incident with Paddy Martin lashing the ball into the filming position, but it's the kind of wee off the field activities as well. It's like I didn't realise this until we got behind the goal action, and I don't know if it's a kid, but somebody shouting, "This is corruption," when Marky Russell scores from the penalty spot.
This is corruption! You cheat!
A couple of things I really loved also at that end of the park when Evan Dunne scored. Have a look back at the highlights and look at the wee ginger kid abusing Evan as he celebrates. That's absolutely hilarious. And I'm not picking on the boy because, to be honest, that could have been me at age 8, 9, or 10 at Stair Park. But it's just funny, this wee ginger kid getting absolutely infuriated about the fact that it's 4-0 and shouting abuse at the Stranraer players. The other one I thought, jumping ahead much later in the game, Lewis Reid gets substituted and he came off and he walked round that end and you can see him doing the hand pump to every one of the wee Spartans kids behind the goal. So I kind of liked it. It's very enjoyable watching a 4-0 win anyway, but it's nice watching all these wee daft kind of off the field activities as well.
In terms of yourself, Gary, just to take a step back there, is it kind of lady luck smiling on us, or is it kind of you get your own luck when you work hard sort of thing?
I think it's the second one. I think you make your own luck. I know we're saying that obviously the third and fourth goal, the ball falls kind of kindly to us, but it's application to try and win the first ball, and then being there, the quickest to react to get the second ball. It gets to the third and fourth goal. If you're not putting the full effort in, it's half-hearted, then you might not get the chance to put away the third or the fourth goal. Maybe the Spartans defender wants it more and clears it. So I get how we can, and if it goes against us, you probably will go, "Oh, that's how lucky is that for them," But I think it does you better if you try and apply the fact that you create your own luck. And I think Quiggy and Dunne wanted it more, and it took both our goals really well.
You're right, Gary. We would not have got those chances this time 2 years ago.
No, and I don't know if that's. I don't know if that's you come in and kind of question players had maybe 2 years on that, but it feels, and again before we came on, saying how positive it all feels, and how it does very much. You see the wee pieces that we're putting out that James does. It's great, the big question and things like that, and even George kind of capturing the highlights pre-match and things like that. It's all so together, especially for a big squad of 24. They all seem like their best mates, and they all seem like they're playing each other and fighting for each other and fighting for the manager and the coaching team he's got. Yeah. Even with the goals, you see the second, third, fourth goal, and George gets the celebrations. I think it's just about every player in a huddle together, celebrating together. And I think that's the kind of the fine margins that make a difference towards the end of the season and how high up you finish in this league, because it's so tight. Every team's pretty even, pretty level. So I think if you've got a team that they're fighting for each other, playing for the manager, playing for the club, it can win you a few extra points over the course of the season, and hopefully it'll do us that kind of end result towards the end of the season. We'll finish a bit higher with it.
You hear it from every squad, Brian, and I mean every squad, every season, up and down the country, in terms of, it's a brilliant dressing room, it's a fantastic dressing room. Never heard a player come out and say it's a rubbish dressing room and I hate every single one of them. But equally, that confidence, that camaraderie, like Lauren said, it felt like everything we touched turned to gold for a spell there, where the second goal went in and you kind of almost just about kind of settled down a little bit, and then the third went in, and then the same with the fourth. There seems to be a real kind of belief and positivity at the moment.
Yeah, there seems to be an attacking purpose, Tammy. I don't know how many Blues bodies were in the box for the third goal when Quiggy scored, but there seemed to be an awful lot. And I think Chris said in his interview he's trying to, encourage him to score more. I mean, Quiggy's, to me, is a brilliant midfielder, and he needs to add goals to his game. I don't know about it. Probably the same with Gillis. Gillis hasn't scored yet, so trying to add goals to his game. But it's there's definitely a more attacking. I'm trying to say the word. There's a more attacking edge to us than what there was. I think it's confidence. If you're maybe a goal up, 2 goals up, you're willing to go forward. But and nobody wants, if you're maybe 2 goals behind, nobody wants the ball. But I think it's a mere attacking edge to definitely in the team, and I was looking, I think that's 18 goals scored in all comps since the lottery game against Dunne. So, I mean, we're getting goals right, left and centre for everywhere.
Well, just to prove that further, Lawrence, obviously every football club again up and down the country, the fans say, oh, you want a 15, 20 goal a season striker. Stranraer have had 14 different players finding it this season. If you can't have a 15 or 20 goal a season striker, you want the goals spread as evenly as possible, I guess.
Get my stats book out here. We've got Marky Russell on 5. We've got James Dolan on 4. We've also got, I was going to say Josh Lane. Darren Lang is actually on 5 now. Who else? Sal's on 4. We've got lots of players on 2 and 1. You're right. We're spreading them around. Just to underline, Brian was talking about Matty Gillis needs to add goals. Aaron Quinn needs to add goals. I noticed George put in one of the shots from the second half from Dunne. And I think that was almost just to prove that we were shooting in the second half, because Dunne had about 3 shots on target in the second half. Arguably, you could say none of them were hard enough to really test Paddy Martin. Danny McManus had a shot right at the end. So that to me is a huge turnaround, the fact that we've got players shooting, because that, even up until August, September this season, we were all sitting here moaning about how we need to get more goals, we need to get more shots away. Now the players are starting to try these things. So I don't know if there's been something going on in training, or if it's just confidence is flowing now and they're quite prepared to try things. But opposite what Brian says about people shying away from the ball, now players are wanting the ball.
It's a goal bonus, Lawrence. I hear that Gary's handing out sizable goal bonuses. That's what it is. Just as a comparison, Gary, as I said, 14 players have found the net this season. We're not even into December. 13 players scored for Stranraer last season. It just shows are we more attacking, or is it just the goals are being more spread out?
I think it's maybe I don't think we're more attacking per se. I think maybe just a case of the goals being more spread out, but I think it's a confidence thing. I think the guys touching it there, that players are wanting the ball, and you can see it, and players are wanting to try and get forward, players want to get a foot in the ball and try and make a difference. So, I mean, the amount of goals that Brian said there since the inning game, I mean, suddenly the fact we've got 3 strikers sitting in the stands, it's such a big positive for Chris and his team, and for us to watch. I know with Sal and Corey either are too far away, and Corey was in the warm-up and stuff on Saturday, so I mean, the fact we're scoring so many goals, we're looking pretty solid defensively. I think I'm talking about all 2 strikers to come back in the next few weeks, hopefully. It's all very positive.
This is all before Lewis Reed scores for 40 yards.
Never going to happen.
Well, you know what? Lewis Reed's shot was arguably a kind of secondary assist for the first goal on Saturday, because it was deflected wide to Dolan, who crossed it back in, and Darren Lang finished. On the subject of Lewis Reed, I wanted to ask Mr. Martin, Brian, what did you make of Lewis Reed's booking on Saturday? Can you remember it?
Oh, horrendous. I mean, sometimes, I don't know. Sometimes where you get these referees from, unbelievable.
I was going to say, by the way, I actually thought the referee had no a bad game on Saturday, but that happened right in front of Cameron and I, and even at the time we were both like, I'm not sure there was much contact there at all. And then when you could see it from the other side, it was like, nah, no for me.
To be fair, when you win 4-0 and you get a penalty, it's going to be hard for us to say the ref had a bad game.
Exactly. It's amazing how they all have a good game when you win 4-0.
Exactly.
Well, I think I'm right in saying that after the game, Lawrence spoke to Evan Dunne, so we'll hear from him now.
Evan, first of all, a 4-0 win away from home against the league leaders. What do you make of that?
Can't ask for much better. Great performance. Scored goals at the right times. Went in at half time 4-0 up and showed a real maturity in the second half to see the game out. Clean sheet, so good afternoon all round. Aye.
First goal for Stranraer. You're talking about scoring goals at important times. We were wondering where the referee was getting the added time from. You scored in 45 plus 4.
Aye.
What do you remember about the goal?
I just remember trying to get the ball went long. Just wanted to hear the half time whistle, 3-0 up, and then we got a corner. And then it's a good delivery for Finn. I've just attacked the ball and don't know if I've got a wee nick on it, and the boys blocked it and then just rebound in. So aye.
It was all, just speaking to the Spartans chairman there, and he was saying it was a sort of mad 20-minute spell for them. And actually, he's got a point, because they were right in it for the first 20-25 minutes, and then everything, we just hit a real purple patch.
Aye, we were saying that in there, it felt a long first 20 minutes. But again, we got a goal at a pivotal time, great finish for Lange. We then get a second, quite the penalty right after. And aye, 3 and 4, that's killed the game.
And your first goal for Stranraer, and actually, as the gaffer was saying, it's good for you to get game time again. So how are you feeling coming back out the team?
Aye, buzzing to be back. Says to us before the game I'd be playing, so when he read the team out, aye, just delighted to be back in the starting 11, and aye, just wanted to do my best and make an impact, and I felt I did that.
And how are you feeling after the injury?
Aye, good. I'm getting there now. It's been a long kind of couple of months, but aye, feeling good. So delighted.
This is up to 6th in the table. Not getting too carried away, but to be honest, that feels a lot more realistic than where we were earlier in the season.
Yeah,
given the players that we've got.
I know the last time we spoke, I think it was Clyde. Came away with 0-0. Says we're disappointed, and a performance like that's been coming, to be honest. Again, I think we showed real maturity going 2-0 up instead of maybe sitting in, which we might have done at the start of the season. We've went and got a 3rd and 4th and put the pressure right on. So aye.
Scottish Cup next week, Clydebank at home. Don't know how to describe it, but it will be a very competitive Scottish Cup time.
Aye, definitely. They're a good side. They've obviously been promoted last year to the Lone League, are doing well in that as well. So I know it'll be a tough task, but just need to keep at it, and hopefully we get through to the next round.
And I'm guessing, given what you showed us this afternoon, you'll be hoping to win the starting lineup for that.
Yep, hopefully. Aye, so you want to play in the Scottish Cup, so first Senior Scottish Cup tie, I'll be looking forward to it for sure. And
if you're wondering what's happening, it's Wales Reid in the background and causing problems for us. Thank you very much. Well done today, mate.
Cheers.
Joining us this week, we have Martin Fellows. Martin, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Hi, Martin.
If we go back to the very start, most coaches have a kind of background in football, playing and then going into coaching. Tell us about kind of how did you get involved in coaching?
That's a good question. I'm from East Kilbride originally, and I was part of the original collection of teams that came together to form East Kilbride FC back in 2010. There was kind of 2 main clubs, Stuartfield and Jackton, and then they kind of swallowed up some other provincial boys clubs. At the time they were trying to put things together, they just built that nice new pitch up in Calder Glen. So I was a youth player playing for them at the time. I got a bad injury. When I say a youth player, it was totally recreational. There would have been there's no story here that if I hadn't got injured, I'd have been a professional, because anybody that's worked with me will know that's absolutely a million miles for the reality. So I got a bad injury in my hip. I had to get an operation in my hip when I was 16. And I kind of got into coaching off the back of that, doing summer camps and kind of Easter, Christmas stuff, that type idea. And then off the back of that, I had a desire to go and get involved in a kind of team environment, which I did. So I kind of started working my way through at that point. I was taking under 9s at East Kilbride, and they'd only had a first team on the go for one season at the time. Ian King was the manager. The club parted company with him, and they brought in a chap called Billy Ogilvie, who had been at Queen's Park for a long time. And a mixture of him and the owners at the time. It's certainly not the glamorous East Kilbride as what people know it as now. And I have that conversation with a lot of people. We were getting balls and cones for wherever we could. It was old Umbro kit that was coming from Ireland. It was all ordered in extra large, and everybody was cutting about in these big tracksuits. So it's a totally different East Kilbride to what MD would know now. It was a collection of players that all come from amateur backgrounds. Some young kind of ex-senior players, but there was no money. It was all voluntary. And they asked me at the time if I would come and help with a game, basically to put the strips up, pump the balls up. And I was a kind of, it was literally, I can't say it was as thorough as we're appointing a kitman and we would like it to be you. It was genuinely, we've got a manager, we've got 5 or 6 players, and we're bringing all these other players in, and can you come and help and just, put the cones together and put the strips out. So I did that, and then that moved into me kind of being the permanent kitman for a few years. At this time I'd been 16, 17, started moving up through the youth teams, taking under 14s, then the 17s, then the 19s. Fast forward 5 or 6 years, Stevie Aitken was East Kilbride manager. I was the under 20s / kind of reserve team manager by this point, and I was working quite closely with Stevie and Chris in the first team capacity. I wasn't a kitman by this point anymore. Somebody else had taken that over, and I was kind of a periphery coach between the 20s and the first team, still there every week. And Stevie left the club, and every day kind of stepped up one notch, if you like. Chris was the assistant. They asked him to take it on as manager, and Chris came round to my house that night, broke the news that Stevie had left, and said that he was going to be taking over, and would I help him take the team, along with Davy McGregor, that's got some rare background as well. So me, Chris and Davy, we didn't know if it was going to be 1 week, a year, or a month, but we did that till that was, my memory serves me right, I think that was September time, and we did that till March. Chris was obviously, really keen to take that job on, and the club went a different direction. And at that point, Kevin Rukovic came in and asked me to stay on. Chris moved on. A year later down the line, Kevin moves on, and the club asked me to take it to the end of the season. And then fast forward a couple of years, I've been managing at St Cadoc's, left there. Chris Aitken had been with me for a short period of time at St Cadoc's. And when I was out of work in the summer, he asked if I'd come in and help for the Betfred Cup, which I was more than obliged to do. And I'm still here today, so they've no managed to get rid of me just yet. It was only meant to be those 2 games. I have a joke with the players every Saturday where I say, right, that's my last game. Well done, all the best. Because it's a week-to-week rolling contract, I'm sure Cosmo would argue.
Martin, you see, you're talking about starting off coming as a kitman. Did you watch Ted Lasso when it was on the telly on Apple?
I've never watched it, Lawrence, but it's a common reference that people make to me when I was appointed East Kilbride manager. The back page of the East Kilbride News and the Daily Record was from kitman to manager, and I think the headline was something like, "It sounds like a storyline for Ted Lasso."
Well, there's a guy on it called Nate who starts off as the kitman at Richmond and ends up as the manager of West Ham later on in the series.
Well, there you go.
So you never know, there might be bigger things ahead. West Ham beckoning.
I've actually said to lots of people, and people would turn your nose up at it in terms of getting involved in that side of the game, the support staff side of a club. But I couldn't have got the education and coaching that I got. I worked with Billy Ogilvie, Martin Laughlin, Billy Stark, Brian Kerr, Stuart Malcolm, Chris Aitken, all these different guys, all in slightly different capacities. At the very start, it was very much kit and me just learning and soaking up that environment. Then as it moved on and Stuart Malcolm was in, it became, the older you get and the younger the manager seem to get, the closer a relationship you seem to have with them. I'm still really close with all these guys, but I say it to people all the time, I couldn't have paid to go and do a course. I used to sit with the manager in his office, more so Billy Ogilvie, because he was the first kind of guy. Believe it or not, he was a Queen's Park kitman and ended up the reserve team manager there, so seen a lot of parallels in me and really took me under his wing a hell of a lot. And he still does to this day. I still speak to him every Saturday night after our respective games. I'd sit in his office and we'd talk about the team and we'd talk about the game, and then I'd go into the dressing room, we'd name a team, and then I'd hear the players' side of it. I'd hear them moaning about who they thought should be playing, and I'd hear, the different side of within the player side of it, and then you kind of come to your own conclusion somewhere in the middle. So for the years I did that, I would thoroughly say to MD that's young and wanting to get involved in coaching, there's no better place than being inside a dressing room and learning from managers and putting yourself on the line where, probably people would say, oh, I would turn their nose up at going and helping with strips or balls or cones. But I tell you what, it gave me a lot of stuff that I wouldn't have to this day if I hadn't done it.
Was there a tipping point as such that, obviously, as you mentioned, you had the hip operation? I imagine as a young guy, you want to be playing football. Was there a tipping point where you kind of thought, actually, I quite enjoy the coaching, that side of things?
Yeah, it probably was that when I got first involved, and then I tried to go back and play a wee bit, as I say, just amateur, recreational. I was too uncomfortable. It was causing me too many problems. Then it was affecting my coaching, which I was really just getting into at the time. And I don't even really remember a time where I think, right, that's me now. I'm going to just concentrate on coaching. It just kind of happened over a wee period of time. And as I say, Billy Ogilvie played a big part in that. Like, he, took me under his wing and really gave me a head start in the game, and was, and then really fast forward to when Chris took over at East Kilbride, that was really the first manager that properly, I'd have been probably 23 or 24, and I even remember the owner at East Kilbride, who I'm really close with, family friend, him saying, no, you can't really do that, too young. But Chris was like, no, this is the guys I want to be part of my management team. They have the attributes and they have what I need. And So to be fair to Chris, I'll always owe Chris a wee bit for that, because he, you were going from helping players a couple of years ago with kit and stuff like that to be taking their training sessions. So MD that knows Tiff knows there's no airs of graces, and he's not, he's not worried what people think, whether it's players or opposition managers, and he certainly wasn't worried about appointing me to his backroom team those 4 or 5 years ago, whenever that was. So I'll always owe him a wee bit for that as well.
You've mentioned in terms of your youthfulness. Did you ever meet with any resistance from players that obviously I could understand if a player, I don't know, is 33, 34 and is like, who's this guy telling me what to do?
It's never. I never have, if I'm being honest. Cammy, I've always been one for just trying to earn people's respect on a personal level, and I think if you do that, then people will give you more time and listen to what you want to say as a coach or professional or whatever environment that is. I think if you go in day one, if I'd went in East Kilbride in day one, or St Cadoc's or Stranraer, and you're trying to, be forceful and try and prove that, I'm good enough to be here, I think people see right through you, and then you will meet resistance. Whereas I think I'm just taking things as they come. I don't look too far ahead. Go in and try and do my best to contribute to whatever environment that is, whether that's Stranraer, St Cadoc's, East Kilbride. Not trying to prove to everybody on day one that you have attributes, and that goes for players as well. If you go into an environment and you think, I need to prove in day one how good I am, then I think very quickly you get caught up in that, and you just fall flat in your face. So no, I've never met with any resistance, if I'm being honest. A lot of guys I worked with, Craig Malcolm, again a Stranraer legend, who I was just kitman at one point as a player, and then Craig was my assistant manager at St Cadoc's, and again really close with Craig. I'd like to think if I went back into management, Craig would be part of wherever that was going to be, and we joke about that at times, that did happen. So yeah, I've never met resistance, Cammy, but I'm sure that might come at some point.
Can I ask?
You had mentioned. Sorry, on you go, Lawrence.
I was just going to say, can I ask something slightly at a tangent? How did you get involved with You've obviously been away with the Scotland under-19s.
Yeah.
How did you get involved with that, Martin?
Yeah, so that was again Billy Stark spent a year at East Kilbride as a manager.
Yeah.
Which again was an unbelievable experience for me. A real top level pro, a real top level guy first and foremost. I think MD that's worked with Billy will tell you that. And again, made a real effort with me, and I was a young coach. I think I was taking under-19s at East Kilbride at the time. And not to bore you, but Ian Lynch joined the under-19s at the time. Ian that plays with, he's Edinburgh City captain now, and he's been at Steny. And I remember saying to Billy, this boy's really come in, and he's only played 3 or 4 games, and I think he's good enough. And there was a bridge between, there was my team, and then there was under-20s at the time. And Billy put him right into the first team, and gave me that confidence of, thinking young players can go in and play in that. It was albeit the Lowland League, but they could go in and perform. And that was always Billy's background, being at Queen's Park and then working with under-21s with Scotland. So Billy was massive for me as well. And then one day I got a phone call that it was for just a last-minute fill-in. They were going to play England, and somebody had pulled out with COVID, and Billy asked if I could come. Then it was actually double booked. They'd already got somebody else to replace me. And it was probably the best thing that happened, because Billy had to phone me back and say, I'm really sorry, Malky Mackay's found somebody to go. And then I thought, well, that's that gone, if that may ever pop back up. But I got a phone call a few months later, because Billy said, look, we'll put you on the list, we'll get your PVG, and then if it ever comes up again, you can travel. And then it just so happened in the summer that a permanent role popped up. I actually went and do my first camp thinking I was filling in, and Billy was kind of saying, no, this is a ongoing thing. So I've been there ever since. Billy retired 18 months ago. Neil McFarlane took over, and again you look and you think, new manager come in, he might change all the staff up, and I've been lucky enough to pull the wool over his eyes as well, and managed to stay in there with him. So again, Neil's been great, top level guy, assistant manager of Brentford, and again, like I'm only in a support role there and in the background, but the exposure to players at that level, to guys like Neil, guys like Lee Wallace, guys like Chris Burke, that have all come through that process as coaches. Chris has moved on now, Lee's replaced him, but it's getting to work with these guys kind of intensely for like 10-day chunks is just, again, a something I never take for granted. If that trip there in November is my last trip, I'll be grateful for the ones I've had.
You mentioned that the theory was that you were basically coming in when Chris was away on holiday at the start of the season. Obviously, here we are now in November.
Yep.
Have you developed a love for the club?
Absolutely. I've said that to quite a few people. Very much fallen in love with the club and short period of time. And, I think until you're in that Stranraer environment, where you're up here and you're a lot of travel together and you become very tight knit. I think very quickly you come to realise why guys like Chris Aitken, Stevie Aitken, players that have played there through the period, Grant Gallagher, Scott Robertson, you could name tons of them, Willie Gibson, Franco, all these guys that come to the club and seem to be there for a period of time. And from the outside, you maybe look and you go, that's some jaunt. That's difficult, for guys to do that. But I think not till you're in there that you realise how good a club it is, I have fallen in love with it in the short period I've been involved. A lot like MD that's come to the club this summer, and that goes down to the manager as well and his staff with the environment he's created. You got to give the committee credit. Guys like Cosmo, guys like yourselves that work really hard to create an environment that people want to be part of. But Chris has certainly done that on the pitch, and I think Andy that came to the club in the summer, a lot of guys came from, different places in the summer, junior, senior, Lowland League. I think you see they've all taken to it very, very quickly, albeit with a bit of a bumpy start. But the management team had confidence we would get there, and hopefully this is just the start.
You mentioned the bus journeys there, and obviously it's not just down to Stranraer. If you're away to Elgin, etc., it's a long journey as well. Do you try to use those journeys as a kind of positive thing to kind of create that bond between the players? Because obviously it could be that you're 20 minutes away and you see each other for a couple of hours a day and that's that. But when there are those longer journeys, that greater time together.
Yeah, no, I've certainly noticed it. When I was at St Cadoc's for the last 2 years, everything was kind of within a maximum 40-minute radius. So you didn't travel a lot with each other, so we had to work really hard at fostering that environment, and doing things to create an environment for people to be there before training, after training, and make it that we could be together. And I think we did achieve that over the 2 years. But I think it happens very naturally with us because of the travel. You got on that bus at Darnley, it stops at Moncton, everybody's together for a long period of time. I think it becomes almost a self-sustaining environment where if there was somebody, and I've only been here since the summer, so I'm not talking from experience, but I think if there was somebody there that wasn't singing from the same hymn sheet, it'd be very difficult for them to be there through your 2 hours on a Saturday there and back. I think it takes a lot of commitment. And I think that's why Chris has done a really good job in recruiting people as well as players. I think I hope you can see from the outside how together the squad is. I think you only have to talk to the injured players or players out of squad. They really buy into it and they're really tight knit. If you go out in Glasgow on a Saturday night, which I don't do very often anymore, you'll be hard pushed not to find 3 or 4 of them out on a Saturday night, unless we've got a midweek game, which we have to remind them about. But guys like James Dolan and Sal and Langy and all these guys, they're Mark Russell, Josh Lane and Scott Ruff, who are inseparable, by the way. So you very rarely will find them not out being together as a team. So, but again, Chris has got to take a lot of credit for the environment he's created with that.
I was going to ask just a little bit more about that. I was going to say, I think I bump into you guys at Moncton every second Saturday when it's a home game because that's my petrol stop as
I've become really acquainted with that lady that walks behind the counter making
absolutely,
It's become a staple part of my life.
I go in with a Stranraer top on. Who are you playing today? Or alternatively, I go in and say, the team's just gone. You've just missed them.
Yeah.
So you said yourself about players coming in. You were talking about Chris bringing players in from all over the place. So I was going to ask, my first thought was you've got a squad of 24 now, albeit there's a couple of injuries.
Yeah.
So I was going to say how difficult it is to bring in so many new players and get it to bed in. And I'm thinking, is that why the start, while we could see what was coming, it was a little bit shaky?
Yeah.
How does and the other point I was going to ask you, Martin, was you've managed, Ginger's managed, Tiff's managed. There's also other guys in the backroom staff.
Yeah.
Were you all kind of instrumental in saying, I think we should get so and so? I think we should get so and so. Was there a big part of other people that I know somebody that plays that position somewhere else?
Yeah, no, it certainly was. Like if I think back to in that summer, even to be fair, even before I was at Stranraer, I would have hit, me and Chris are really close as friends. So that process had started even before I was in the building, not with any forward planning, just with, I remember Chris phoning me one night and he was in the car with Cosmo and they were going to watch a player, two players that are now Stranraer players, and he was going to watch one, and I remember saying, get a look at one of the other ones. It was 2 of the boys for Beeve. They ended up signing 3 of them, and Evan Dunne at the time. They were looking at Jordan and Rough, and I remember saying on the phone, Evan Dunn's somebody I really like, and I think I'd just left St Cadoc's at that point, so I wasn't giving away trade secrets to Chris for guys I was trying to sign for next season, because Evan's one we'd identified to try and bring to St Cadoc's, and I remember saying to Chris, that he's one that you should go and look at, and then that continued in. But Chris would have done the same with me. That's when I was at St Cadoc's, when he was there and when he wasn't there. Players that he'd have worked with and he'd have known, and I signed guys at St Cadoc's that Chris had managed for East Kilbride. So
Yeah.
I don't think that was that was probably a process that had been ongoing for, if I go back to when Chris was at Kilwinning and I was at East Kilbride, the two of us had a really strong relationship and kept that going, and then it just kind of came together in the summer with me, Chris and Ginge and Gary and Jim and everybody else that's there, everybody had different voices, and as you say, we all have managed and we all have very different styles, like as that manager. So it's important for me to just support Chris as best I can and give Chris what he needs from me. And going back to what you said about a lot of players coming in the summer, I think you could see it early on, but I think us as a staff were also trying to bring the group together, and there was formations tried, there was different personnel tried, people tried in different positions, and there was a wee bit of us getting to know. Players will always surprise you. You always think everything about players. That I've went and watched them, recruited them, I've worked with them before, I know what they're going to bring. They always bring you surprises. That's the only thing you can guarantee. You put them in a different environment, a different structure, a different league, they'll show you different things. So I think for us, even though we all felt we had a strong grip on what we were bringing to the club, and we did, I think it took us a wee bit of time just to find that settled kind of starting 11. And even things like James Dolan coming back from Spain, not being up to speed. Kirky picked up an injury in the first game against Larne, and that put him back. So there was a lot of moving parts early on. We were coming together as a new management team in our first pre-season, because Chris had come in mid-season, so I hadn't had that pre-season with the players. So there was a lot going on in the summer, and I like to think now, hopefully, we're starting to see a wee bit of the rewards for that. Still a long, long way to go and a lot of work for us to be done.
Martin, can I ask you, how has Jordan Stewart managed to escape the SPFL till 29? I mean, why did nobody pick him up?
It's funny you say that, because I have a laugh with Jordan, because he obviously was at Kilwinning and at Beith, and he played against me with Beith twice last year, and he wasn't somebody on our radar either. And I remember Jordan saying, "You thought I was going to be rubbish, didn't you?" And I was kind of saying, "Well, no, I didn't. No, but I didn't know what you were going to bring," and political answers. But we now have a bit of a laugh about that, where I say to Jordan, "I tell you what, you're actually good. You're good," and I didn't realise it. I seen you playing, and to be fair, he's playing different positions and stuff like that, and it was just one of those ones that did fly under the radar. But again, giving Chris credit that he banged on about him when he was at Kilwinning. Said what a top player he was at Kilwinning, and then when he came to Stranraer, I think it was always on the cards for him to try and bring Jordan to Stranraer as soon as he could. So he's a top player. He's been outstanding for us. Really good. He's so industrious, but he gets about the pitch well. His use of the ball's good, and he's got so many good qualities. And to be 29, and as you say, having missed that SPFL, it doesn't really surprise me in terms of, I think the gap in quality from SPFL to the West of Scotland League is paper thin. Really paper thin. I genuinely believe that. And I've worked, now having been in the SPFL and worked at Lowland League level, worked at West of Scotland League level, I believe the quality is thin between those three leagues. What I would say is I do believe the athleticism goes up the levels. I think if you look at the game on Saturday, there's not a player on the pitch that you look at and think, he doesn't quite look fit. He looks like he's got good ability, but missing. If we only could cover more ground, I think in League Two, I think the average age is younger as well. If I look at the average of our team on Saturday, most teams you play have players that have been at full-time SPFL clubs at under 18, under 19 level, and they find themselves in League Two as that next. They've been released and they're trying to put themselves back in the shop window. Quiggy, Kirky, players like that go straight from full-time to League Two, that don't quite go to the juniors as quickly, or the West of Scotland League as quickly, because they don't want to take that drop just yet.
We've had that, Martin, a few times. We always think that must be hard. So we've had players who have been with us and gone up the way. The likes of Kyle Turner's a recent example. Craig Ross is a recent example. But I always think it must be hard that, yourself, you read the papers in Scotland, and any young player at League Two level is ex-Rangers star,
Yeah.
ex-Celtic star. And
Yes.
the reality is they were there at under 18, under
Yeah.
19 level.
Yeah.
I think that must be so hard mentally to get your head away from, I'm playing for Celtic, I'm playing for Rangers, to suddenly I'm in League Two and where am I going? I've got to sink or swim kind of thing.
Totally can be really difficult, and there's far lesser clubs for them to fall to up here than there is down south. You know, if you fall for Celtic, Rangers, and you fall to Morton, Dunfermline, you know, Wraith Rovers, and then you don't quite make it there before you know it,
Aye,
you're doing well to get a League Two club.
you're part-time, yeah.
You're part time. Whereas if you're down in England and you're at Middlesbrough, you fall to Coventry, you fall to Rotherham, then
Yeah.
you get to non-league. There's players on £1,000 a week in the National League, so it's certainly less, you know, clubs up here for them to filter into, especially when you do leave the big two and Celtic and Rangers. But yeah, as I do think that's the difference between League Two and the non-league side of Scotland. And I think, I mean, when you see the quality, I think Saturday was harder game as we've had all season when Clydebank come to Stair Park. And I think you can talk about it on a podcast and say, no, the gap's not big. I think people see firsthand on Saturday, you know, how strong a side Clydebank are, how much quality they've got, a lot of ex-senior players in there as well. You know, the gap continues to shrink year on year between the bottom end of the SPFL and the top end of non-league football.
How important, Martin, are the non-footballing attributes, I guess, in terms of you might look at a player and they look a good player, but you think, is he really going to kind of gel with the rest of the squad? How important is it that, as you said, you've got that kind of harmonious squad?
I think that's all down to everyday style, you know, as a manager, certainly for me. And I think that's probably where me and Chris and Stevie are different in lots of different ways. But I think one thing that we're all probably aligned on is the people side of things, you know, and as you say, somebody having the personality traits to come into an environment, and that's for me really, really massive, really massive. You know, if you can't have somebody in there that trusts the process and buys into what we're trying to do, they're as well not being there. It doesn't matter how good they are, and that sounds cliche, but I've seen it. I've seen it before. I've seen it through the years. I've experienced as a manager. You know, and that's not to say people are bad people, but I've been there myself where we want to do things a certain way. Certainly me, I'm slightly different in my approach in terms of I like my analysis. I buy into sports science, and that just comes from the background I've worked in. And I've sat across the table for players, and sometimes I haven't sat across the table for players, and I've signed them just because I think he'll be good. And then I find out quickly that they actually don't enjoy that type of football. I remember having a conversation with a player really early into my time being a manager, and you know, him saying to me, I really like you and I really like this, but I don't see myself sitting watching a video. I like to do a 2-hour session and be knackered at the end of it, you know, and that wasn't a fallout. That was a real, and it was a good learning experience for me because I thought I'll not do that again. You know, it's important that players know the environment they're coming into, and yeah, I think that's really, really important, that you've got to get the people side of the game right as much as the playing attributes.
How does training work like that? That obviously full-time clubs, they've got infinitely more time, whereas Stranraer, other part-time clubs, you've got a couple of hours, a Tuesday and a Thursday.
Yeah.
I guess that you need to find that balance between almost your kind of classroom style stuff, the analysis, showing them things, and also the practical, the football.
Yeah, I think you've got to keep it to 15 minutes. You know, like that's and Chris has been great at that in terms of allowing me to come in and really work on that side of it. You know, we've kind of got training down to a fine art between the management team. You know, Chris oversees a lot of the inputs and those tactical bits that he really feels are what he wants to see from his team, and he lets the other guys do the heavy lifting in terms of the kind of day-to-day bits in the meeting or the training sessions, and that just comes from us worked with each other before. You know, that's now the third club that me and Chris have worked with. One with him being a manager, one with me being a manager, now back to him being the manager. But I don't think it matters, and that's probably one of Chris's best qualities, that none of us are hung up about who's doing what or titles, or you know, we know what the job's to be done. We know when we sit and we plan it and we go, right, what do we need to do tonight? We'll do that. He'll do that. Chris will do this, but you know, I'll deliver the meeting, whatever that looks like. It's kind of irrelevant, because as long as we get to the end goal that we're trying to achieve, then that's the most important thing. And again, worked with Stevie as well, so we're all, you know what, all good people as well. And that makes things a hell of a lot easier. So yeah, we've kind of got it down to it's difficult part-time level. We come in a Tuesday, a lot of time we'll debrief the game from a Saturday, and that'll be a 15-minute meeting in Benburb. We'll have the telly, we'll go through that, and then that's it, done. We're not spending 45 minutes of a training session going through it. And again, everybody's different. Some managers might feel that they need that. Just with the environments I've worked in and the people I've worked in, I don't believe you retain the information after that 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Malky used to always, when we used to have the meetings at St Cadoc's and I'd do the video, if I went over that 15 minutes, Malky would be up the back of the room tapping his watch and he'd be like, that was 16 minutes, 48 seconds you had a day. Too long. He'd be always on my case. So, I've learned over the period as well that maybe when I was first starting 2.5 years ago, and I was really keen and thinking I had to squeeze everything in and do everything in 10, I think I've learned as well that the players want to be out on the pitch and they want to be enjoying their football. So we have to make sure we balance that for getting the tactical bits in and getting what we think is important, but also making sure they're here to play football and they're here to enjoy it, and we don't want to take that away from them.
Is that kind of your Sunday, as it were, in terms of kind of breaking down the game, kind of going over it piece by piece, and then deciding kind of what's going to come out of that to be shown on the Tuesday?
Yeah, it is, and again, all the staff input in that. Every day I'll see things and want certain parts included in the meeting. When I was away last week, Stevie was talking to. We've got an analysis intern in with us at the moment that is a student at still in uni. So we had a relationship with the uni back to my previous 2 clubs, and what they do is we offer a placement that's a voluntary placement that can come as a module. So Finn's with us as a module. So he's in every training session and every game. So he's only learning that process. So we're now quite a while in with him. So he's now taking a lot of the heavy lifting off that for me. He's now, you'll see him in the stand up next to where George films at times, and he's clipping things during the game because we're now trying to speed that process up, that I don't have to spend all day Sunday and maybe come 4 o'clock I can get to the pub for a beer. But yeah, a lot of my Sundays and Mondays are made up of being at the laptop and feeding that back to Chris and Stevie and what do you want shown and what do you think. But as I say, it's a very collaborative process.
Clearly a love of the game there, Martin, from all of you, because let's be honest, Stranraer aren't paying you all 100 grand a year, so you're putting in a lot of time.
Way more than that.
Way more than that. I'm basically drawing attention to the fact that
I'm only here for the money, Lawrence.
What was that?
I'm a mercenary. I'm only here for the money.
It's like Brian's only here for the cake. No, it's my way of saying that basically you guys are putting in a lot of time over and above, as it were. And I'm guessing at part-time football, whether it's management, backroom, players, there's a lot of that goes on.
Yeah, and I go back to Chris fostering that environment. Like Chris will tell the players, you only put into it, you only get out of it what you put into it. So for us as staff, at this level, you will know a lot better than me. There's 5% between every team, from top to bottom.
Yeah.
So for us, we have to, I keep saying to the players, we have to find that extra percent. Now, whether that's through our sports science or analysis or getting the travel arrangements right or getting our training right or Chris's team talk, we're trying to gain 1%. So we have to work really, really hard when there's nothing between any of the teams in this division, that we have to try and make it not a toss of a coin. I done an interview with George and the guys after the Motherwell B game. We were talking about that to say, look, we have to try and make games less of a battle and have a wee bit more control and, control the controllable a wee bit more. And we are getting to that. I see on Saturday, I think we played a lot better at times and have nothing out of games than we did on Saturday. If I think back to early on in the season, East Kilbride away, to have nothing out of that game, I thought we were miles better at East Kilbride away than we were Spartans away. And I think everybody's probably in agreement with that.
Probably true,
For us, we have to keep working just to make sure, even now when we're doing a bit better in terms of form, we have to keep the processes strong, because before you know it, you lose 2 games, you'll be down the bottom of that league in this. It's unforgiving division.
That's what we're talking about up to a point. Earlier we were recording, we were talking about the fact that the last few weeks now, we are quite confident that we're going to go onto the pitch and be competitive.
Yeah.
And that wasn't always the case a couple of seasons ago. We might lose a game. We lost to East Kilbride at home a couple of weeks ago, but we played pretty well. We're now more competitive than we were.
Yeah. And as I say, the guys, I think that goes hand in hand with everything. The committee have really supported Chris, Stevie and myself through the summer to get the guys wanted to get in. And even when the Hearts boys came up, that was probably a difficult time of the year for that to present itself in terms of club level. And the club worked really hard to make that happen for us, and that, I think that gave us a real boost, the 2 young ones coming in and giving us a real shot in the arm. And so it goes hand in hand. Chris, myself, Stevie, Gary, Jim, have all worked really, really hard. But the club have supported that process as well. And yeah, we are, in a position where we think we can compete with them, and it's just trying to be consistent to pick up as many points as we can. Look at the quarters. Our first quarter was really poor. Started the second quarter better than we did the first one, and it's now just trying to pick up as many points per game as we can to be at the end of the table we want to be at.
Martin, rules geekery, you messaged me from Lithuania a couple of weeks ago, last week, just to explain Brian and I's misunderstanding of what the referee was up to with the Stramash when he booked Darren Lang. And I pointed that out on last week's podcast. You were saying when there's a set two with both teams, and I think is it more than two players involved in each team, the referee's got to book one from either side, no matter how unfair that might seem when the player booked. So are you somebody that's sitting there like keeping an eye on what IFAB are up to with the rule changes at all points?
You're showing me up here, or you're showing me for what I really am here, Lawrence, because I don't know what's worse. The fact I'm sitting in Lithuania listening to a Stranraer podcast, or the fact that I'm then texting into you about rules, but I can't help myself. Yeah, and I remember that from when I was at St Cadoc's, there was a Stramash in the pitch, and there was two bookings. And I remember asking the referee, why we didn't do anything to get a booking there.
Yeah,
and it was if there's multiple people, they're called mandatory bookings.
Yeah.
So it's a player from each side, and usually it's the captain. He might have just picked Lange because Lange was breaking up and was closest to him, or he caught his eye line. He probably done us a favour because he was a forward player, so it's less likely of him getting a second booking. But it then became, we were having the chat at the dinner table when I was away in Lithuania with Scotland, because I was saying, does MD actually know that rule here? Because, and it's funny because Neil McFarlane was saying to me, well, you'd maybe save me a booking, because if that happened, I'd be going mental, and I'd be getting a yellow card for Derren getting booked there.
Yeah.
So, it's one of those crazy rules. I do like to try and keep up with the rules. Got a lot of friends that are referees and know a lot of people. Also, when you're working with the SFA as well, you want to make sure you're, if you're away, you want to make sure you know the rules and you're in a position that sometimes that is amazing, the rules that you pick up in those UEFA tournaments. Like there's crazy rules where in qualifying they deduct every result against the bottom team in every group, and you've got to work backwards to count.
Aye.
Like it's crazy. So I have found myself being a rule geek and tend to be somebody will ask, what is the rule with that? And even if I don't know it, I'll just kid on that I do.
Well, you can, that's one of your multitude of tasks you can add to. You can keep Brian and I right, Cameron, when he's on duty as well. Because to be honest,
I picked up on one this Saturday as well, Lawrence.
We just jump all over the referee. To be honest, what was it this Saturday?
It was East Kilbride game actually, because I think you were looking at a booking for Joe Baldi at the penalty.
Yes,
but and I was thinking at the time that everything's downgraded in the box for an attempt to the ball.
Yeah.
So for Joe Baldi to get a booking in the box, it has to be a red cardable offence. So any tackle, so even if he'd caught him, like the way Sean Docherty caught Cammy Russell at Spartans, like we were talking about, it has to be like an ordering off offence for him even to get a yellow, which is everything is kind of knocked down one. So yeah, I'm a mad.
That was Brian. I was quite happy.
That was Brian. Aye,
penalty. Aye, Brian. Surely that's a booking, but I was actually on the referee's side for once, and it probably won't continue.
I like to be impartial if I can. I like to be, and I like to, if I get something wrong with the referees, I'll admit when I'm wrong. But
do you know what? I spend every Sunday morning that I'm involved on the Saturday looking at what I got wrong in commentary, and there's something every week, because you say it in the spur of the moment, you see it as you see it at the time. Last Saturday at Spartans, we were adamant it was a handball for the penalty. Looking at the highlights, I think it was maybe the foul rather than the
I'm still not sure actually. I'm still not sure. I have to check. But no, you're right. I think I listened to an interview last week with Martin Hill talking about making mistakes, and I think he said something that he's down to making 1,000 a day at the moment. So I think if I'm down towards 1,000 mistakes a day, I'll be quite happy as well.
I'm intrigued now.
Sorry,
go, Brian.
No, just one final one for me, Martin, about this is maybe going to be very unfair on you.
Don't say it, then. Don't say it.
I mean, I've watched Stranraer for about 100 years. I said the best centre back we ever had at Stranraer on loan was Declan Gallagher, who went on to play for Scotland. Can Lewis Reid go as far as that?
I think Lewis Reid's got all the attributes to play at a top level. I and I hope I'm not putting him under pressure. I regularly tell him, you better go and make it full time, because if you don't, I'll be waiting here for you. That, because he's got good personality, Lewis, and he likes to keep you on your toes, and he's quick to try and have a go at me. You're eating a pie, it's non-professional.
We're friends, it's fine. Sometimes like you.
So I always say to him, you better make sure at some point you're back playing full time, because if you're not, I'll be down here waiting on you. So no, I think he's, joking aside, I think he's got all the attributes. For his age, shows real maturity on the pitch, left-footed, strong, aggressive in the air. He's got a long way to go. He's got a lot of stuff to work on in his game, and he knows that. He comes on every Saturday looking for his clips of the previous game and trying to improve. So that gives him half a chance, because he's not sitting here thinking he's the finished article. He works really hard at the athletic side of his game. Probably too much at times. We've tried to say to him he's off on that a wee bit, because worried that he does himself harm. But he's working really, really hard away from Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday to be a top pro. And I do think Brian, I think he's got the attributes, and I'm not putting him under pressure by saying that, because I'd be being dishonest if I said otherwise, that he can get back playing full time.
He's determined to go through the middle some week and get that goal as well.
Yeah, it'll not come. It'll not come. He couldn't hit a barn door with a machine gun. So it'll not come. It'll come. But he does the crossing and finishing, and he's as well putting £9 in the fines at the start of the night, because he's putting 3 over into the Asda car park. So that goal will not come. I'm confident in that.
I'm intrigued, Martin. You'd mentioned about listening, watching the podcast. Is that just you, or have the management mentioned listening to us as well?
Probably not the podcast, but if I'm being honest, we sat and we were watching. Obviously, we've got the video camera, and Finn, the analysis student, was able to do that in my absence. So we were sitting in the Scotland meeting room watching the St Mirren game. So it gathered a crowd, and it's funny because the staff and the players, I was saying this to Tiff actually, have all kind of bought into it. And they are all intrigued by, Matty Gillis. Then I worked with Matty, and then Matty comes on loan to Stranraer, basically as soon as I get back for the international break in September. That arose, and we done that deal. So it became a wee bit of a, the boys are like, oh, what's it like at Stranraer with Fez? And because my role's very different there, so yeah, the staff are all kind of bought into it. And I have a bit of a joke with Dan Fletcher's boy Tyler, because Cosmo was quick to tell me that his grandfather played with Stranraer.
Yep.
So I'm always saying to Tyler, Man United, I think alone at Stranraer would do you the world of good. So no, it has. It's amazing the people with SFA that previously when it was St Cadoc's, and they were talking about that, and now they're asking about Stranraer, and Neil McFarlane knows Chris and Stevie as well. So there's definitely a shared interest there, and as I say, we're all gathered around the meeting room watching the St Mirren B game. So and Evan Mooney was there from St Mirren B, and Matty Gillis was sitting there for Stranraer, and at different points each of them were off the seat and giving each other a wee bit of verbal. So no, it has reached if you can believe that the Stranraer chat has reached Scotland qualifiers in Lithuania within the 19th. Trust me, I make sure it does reach, because I have a bit of a laugh with the staff about all that.
That is fantastic, Martin. Thank you very much for taking time out on your Wednesday night.
No, you saved me I'm trying to build a flat pack chest of drawers in this. I'm up to my neck in dowels and side parts and screws that I don't know where they're meant to go. So this was a welcome distraction.
You can away and look for that one bit that's probably missing now.
Brian, obviously Clydebank this coming weekend. What memories do you have of facing the Bankies? Not you personally, obviously, but Stranraer Football Club.
I mean, I think I can remember them in the Jack Steedman days. I'm going way back now. Yeah, I'm going way back now, right enough. I know he was quite a shady character. Can I say that?
Steedman brothers. There was
just
two
did.
Was it the brothers? Was it? I thought it was just Jack himself that almost run the club to the ground. I mean, I must admit, I like their strip these days, but with some fantastic games against them, and I think we touched on it. A couple of weeks ago. I can't even remember a lot about Clydebank games, but I know we played when Cooper was in the Clydebank team. So I mean, we played against some great players in their time until sadly they became financially a bit unstuck. But I mean, down through the years, they've been in the big leagues, haven't they? They've been in the top league. So I mean, they've been a good team. But as I say, they got financially unstuck. But they seem to be on their way back anyway.
What about yourself, Lawrence? What are your memories of Stranraer versus Clydebank?
Not that many memories of actual games, although I do remember us being in the same division as them on numerous occasions. Memories of Clydebank, as Brian says, I can remember them top and the bottom. I remember seeing them when I came to Edinburgh at first, playing against Hearts in the Premier at Tynecastle. So, they were in the big time. I always remember, funnily enough, there was a season in the 70s when we were sitting top of the second division. We ultimately finished fourth. But what I do remember is Clydebank were top of the first division that year, and there always seemed to be this scoring race between Derek Fry of Stranraer, and I think it was maybe Mike Larnick at Clydebank who was their top scorer. Our first ever away game out the bottom league was at Kilbowie, and actually, with hindsight, it turned out to my only ever visit to Kilbowie. We lost 3-2, and that was the game. That was the game I remember where Davy Cooper was up against us. Then latterly we had, when Clydebank were playing at Dumbarton and they were playing at Capello, and then we had the whole, I don't know what would be too controversial, but sad affair where they went bust, and basically Airdrie, who were, well, they didn't go bust. Airdrie, who went bust, then bought Clydebank's place in the league to make sure they're still in Airdrie there. So you get the whole nonsense arguments online that, Clydebank still exists. They now play at the Excelsior Stadium and are called Airdrieonians. Well, nobody regards them as the same. And if you ever get a cup tie, hopefully Clydebank don't progress this week, but if they ever get drawn to play Airdrie, get the popcorn out, shall we say. But it was sad times. I do remember latterly at Capello, so remember, this is across the Erskine Bridge from Clydebank. They're playing there, and there were games with like 120 people there. One thing, concrete thing, I do remember the season that we won what is now League One under Campbell Money. Clydebank went up with us, and we were both in what is now the Championship the next year. So don't specifically remember a lot of actual games between each other, but they were always there or thereabouts at the same time as us. If you're a Clydebank fan of long standing, you're probably thinking, we were much higher than Stranraer for a lot of the time, and they were, but probably a wee bit before my time.
What about yourself, Gary? Are you going to come on here and tell us you're too young to remember any games against Clydebank?
I'd have probably been about 2 or 3 year old. And given the fact I had to watch the highlights of the Spartans game before I came on the podcast tonight, I mean, it's unlikely I can remember anything for that far ago, that long ago anyway.
We'll come back to yourself, Brian. Obviously, Clydebank top of the Lowland League. Is it basically important to steal your phrase from previous weeks? Important to start with a hot tap?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Chris and Ginge and Fez will make sure that we've got to start on the front foot, because I mean they're used to winning, and I mean if you go a goal down, it'll be a very, very hard task. But I think we've got to start on the front foot. I was looking at some of their players, Cammy. Their midfield could total, if I've got a notion of 3 midfielders, their age could total 94, I think it is. They've got 2 33-year-olds, Nicky Lowe and Little. So they've got Little and Lowe, and I think the other boy will be Gallagher, and it could be Gallagher. So I mean they've got 3 very, very experienced boys. I think our middle 3, if I'll predict the team, I think our middle 3, their age is 62 combined. So you've got, it's like, I can remember it, Dunragit, in the 60s and 70s, they used to play fathers v sons, and it used to be the older guys against the boys. And it looks like this Clydebank team look to be the older guys, and we're the boys. And by the way, the boys always win. So hopefully that'll be replicated on Saturday.
What about you, Gary? What are your memories of Dunragit in the 60s and 70s? What do you expect from Clydebank? Sorry.
He's praying for a bypass.
We couldn't get through one podcast with Dunragit getting mentioned, could we? I'd expect them to be a well-organised, very good team, to be honest. It always worries me when when you're playing against a team that's so used to winning games, it doesn't matter what kind of level they are, they're always going to come here and they're going to back themselves. I think we lost 3 or 4 games in maybe 2 years or something silly like that. You keep an eye out that in Cameron, but they're going to be a good team. But I think Chris has pointed out in a few of his interviews, we need to just focus on ourselves as we should. We're the League Two team that's only lost 2 games out of 11, and we're in form, and we've got very good players by the way, and we're a very good team as well. So I think we just need to focus on ourselves and turn up and be in the front foot from the start, and hopefully it'll take care of itself.
I think it's important, Lawrence, when managers say that's not a cockiness or kind of being conceited that, oh, we'll focus on ourselves and we'll be fine. But obviously, we are a team that's in form, and hopefully a team that's going to be in the draw at the end of the weekend.
Yeah, if you're a Bankies fan when the draw was made, you probably fancy your chances. Arguably, if you're a Bankies fan, you might still fancy your chances. But we've been in a really good run since that draw was made. Likewise, Clydebank, they've won the West of Scotland League last season. They're sitting top of the Lowland League this season. You don't get to do that by being a lucky team. They're obviously very good. One thing they'll no thank me for mentioning, their last defeat, and Stranraer fans will no thank me for mentioning this name either, was against Broxbourne on the 8th of November. So they're not unbeatable, but what I would say is it's turning into a right good battle at the top of the Lowland, and Broxbourne are sniffing around there, as are Lithgow, who the Bankies drew with on Saturday. Totally agree with what the three of you have been saying. Is I think it's important that we start on the front foot on Saturday. Don't fancy our chances against a team that's used to winning, having to come from behind.
A couple of familiar faces in the squad, Brian. Chris McGowan, who I must admit I quite liked at Stranraer.
Yeah.
Keir Sampson, who was part of the youth system and then scored for East Kilbride in the playoffs against us as well. Andy Leishman, who was in goals for Auchinleck 12 years ago when we played them in the Scottish Cup.
Auchinleck again, Cameron.
That's it. My favourite game, never mind favourite Scottish Cup game. As I said, a squad packed with experience and a squad that's used to winning.
Yeah,
I think they might be struggling with injuries because Samson's not appeared for 3 or 4 weeks now. He's been out of the team. I don't know whether he's injured, but he's not been playing. The goalkeeper will be Stott. Leishman doesn't play these days. It's the young kid Stott. Well, he's 26 right enough, but he'll be in goals. McGowan seems to be getting a game right enough. I was a wee bit surprised today that they called a boy from St Cadoc's, a boy called Fraser Johnson. He was out on loan to St Cadoc's for Clydebank, but they recalled him and he goes straight into the pool for Saturday. I just wonder if they're struggling for numbers in midfield because it's quite a funny thing that recalling a player back for a loan. So I just wonder if they're maybe struggling for numbers in that department because Johnson has been playing for St Cadoc's. He's not been getting a game, so I don't know whether they're struggling for numbers. I know it'll probably low and little. They seem okay. They've been playing most games. The boy Black was suspended last week, but I would take it he'll be back on Saturday. And just as somebody was saying there about Lawrence said about they get beat by Broxbourne. I thought the struggle. I watched the highlights. I thought the struggle to beat Gala. I know 2 games aren't the same, but they seem to struggle to beat Gala 2-1, and then they drew away Lithgow on Saturday 1 each. So I don't know whether the best of form, but very, very. We hate to watch and put it that way, but I think it'll be a great. I think it'll be a great game.
I think, Brian, there'll be a better, there'll be a different kettle of fish from Glenafton. There'll be a significantly stronger side than Glenafton. Yep. What struck me though when the draw was made was the number of Stranraer fans, because we had gone through a wee bit of struggle, saying, "Oh, that'll be a tough," and they're right, it will be tough. But by the way, they're there for us to beat the same way as we're there for them to beat, and there's no reason why, if we approach the game correctly on Saturday, we can't beat them.
I think if you ask the same people that make them kind of comments, Lawrence, how they feel about it now heading to Saturday, a different tune.
Yeah.
So it will be.
So Brian, obviously we usually ask you this. Manager made 3 changes at the weekend there. Do you anticipate same starting 11? Do you reckon there'll be changes?
He's getting his dossier out there, Cam. You see that? He's getting his dossier out. Dodgy dossier.
I think there'll be one change from Saturday. I think Plank will drop to the bench, and I think Jordan Stewart will come back in for the back 4. I don't know what's wrong with Jordan. I think he was ill, wasn't he, during the week? I think he'll come. I think I caught, no offence to Don Plank, but but this is a tie for men, you know, and Dom's a great wee player, but it might not be the right tie for him. And, you know, I can see Russell and Lang being the front two, you know, and with Gillis, Quigg and Dolan across that three and Stewart in front of the back five, which are usually there. So I can see one change and Stewart coming in place of Plank.
Would you go along with that, Lawrence, as founding member of the Don Plank fan club?
I would actually. To be honest, if we turn it away from Dom, who I think is brilliant, I would always have Jordan Stewart in the starting lineup. So yeah, absolutely. I don't see any reason why you wouldn't bring him back in. As to how you do the changes, I'll leave that sort of black magic up to Brian to suss out, to be honest.
So just lastly, Gary, how do we avoid a cup upset? Obviously, we lost to Broxburn last year. How do we ensure we're in the draw for the fourth round?
By beating Clydebank is
Good.
the most
Right,
obvious.
thank you very much.
Is the most obvious answer. But I think it's probably reiterating the same kind of points we made earlier. It's focusing on ourselves and starting on the front foot and just applying ourselves for the first minute. And obviously, not taking Clydebank lightly, but just remembering that, you know, we're in good form, we're a good team, we've got good players, and if everybody applies themselves to 100%, then it should be a result that we get. We should be in the Sunday. Is it on the Sunday?
I'd imagine so. Usually,
Let's go with that.
Yeah.
One thing just that was kind of highlighted there in terms of applying ourselves, and I appreciate we've said before in terms of the youth of the squad, Lawrence, but do you reckon we've got more characters in the squad now in terms of we won't allow ourselves to perhaps kind of look beyond Clydebank or look to the next league game or who we could get if we get through, etc.? Or have we got more kind of experienced heads that'll keep us grounded, I guess?
I think we've got more of everything. I think it was mentioned earlier on about, Gary mentioned about the squad being prepared to fight for each other, fight for the manager, fight for the club. I think it was also mentioned in terms of the things like the videos that James Verity puts out. There's a fun in this squad and a togetherness in this squad. And I hark back yet again, Neil Watt and Stuart Miller's squad, who are still meeting up 20 years later. There's a togetherness there, and I'm a great believer that that's the sort of thing that wins games. You know, if you're travelling down 80 miles each way from Glasgow to play for the team and your heart's not in it, you're not really going to battle to the same extent. If you're coming down with your mates, some of them have actually said they quite enjoy some of the bus trips. If you're coming down with your mates, enjoying your Saturday out, winding each other up, having a laugh, having a lively dressing room, yeah, you're going to battle for your mates. And I think we've got that. We've got more physicality. We've got more experience. We've got more football, I would say. I think we've got a bit more everything this season. Well, that's enough to win us a cup tie on Saturday. Time will tell. But I think what I've seen in recent weeks is we're going into games and we know at the start of the game we'll be competitive. And that wasn't always the case maybe 2 or 3 years ago.
So there you have it. Time will tell. Head along to Stair Park this weekend and fingers crossed we're celebrating a famous Scottish Cup victory. We'll see you then.